Welcome back everybody to Stereo and Beyond, and it has been a while since I've made a video, but that's because I didn't really change a lot in my setup, and I'm still working out my camera things because this is recorded on my cell phone and I think the quality is okay, but I would prefer 60 fps. But on my S9 Plus I can only record 60 fps for 10 minutes, so if you have a workaround for that, or you know an app that does allow 60 fps for longer than 10 minutes, because I have plenty of storage, then please let me know. But yeah, I'm trying to figure some things out here. But I've made a couple changes over the last couple months, and all in all, I've been pretty glad because I changed everything up there. As you can see, shelves are gone, new shelves went in, speakers are mounted to the wall, etc. But this is a recent acquisition of mine. I purchased this preamplifier. If you don't know how my system is connected, let me explain that real quick here. Before I got that preamplifier, I just used my Denon X 6300H as a preamplifier. And I believe you can use receivers for preamplifiers in certain use cases. If you have a high-end receiver like this, the 6000 series from Denon, or the 7000 series, or Marantz 7000, or a Yamaha new 3070, 3080, or maybe a dedicated pre-pro from Emotiva, Rotel, that stuff. The high-end receivers. This one costs 2,500 euros new. And I believe if you're combining that with a good power amplifier, I'm not talking about audio level quality. You will not connect a Macintosh power amplifier that costs 5, 6, 7,000 euros, dollars, whatever, to a receiver like this. You need to balance things out a little bit. I would not recommend using a cheap receiver, 4000 series Denon, 6000 series Marantz, etc., as a preamplifier. You will definitely lose quality there. I have used those kind of receivers in the past. They do the job, of course, but you don't get that high-end sound out of a receiver pre-stage. But yeah, that pre-stage of that receiver was connected to this restorated Onkyo M5060, and between those two devices there was this Yakin CD3 tube buffer with 6S and 7 GTB tubes from what is the brand called again? Raytheon. Yeah, probably the best 6S and 7 tubes you can buy on the market. At least for my use case scenario. Yeah, but now I have made my system completely separated. I used to have those two speakers, Ambiquad QLS 2090s and Ambiquad 2000s. I had them both connected to my Onkyo power amplifier, because you can switch between two sets of speakers. But it always was a dream of mine to have separates, because, well, these speakers are really high-end, price-wise, sound-wise, really high-end. New price was, you can buy a really nice car. Let's just put it that way. So I wanted to have a system that would match up to those speakers. And as good as I think my receiver sounded, because I have had some other preamps that were mediocre, etc., and they did the job fine, but they were on par with my receiver. So if you're in the mid-high end, even high-end audio, you have a high-end receiver and a good power amplifier, then you could use a receiver for sure. The Yakin also really worked well to up the sound quality, because if I would just connect my power amplifier to the pre-stage, it was alright, it was okay, but it lacked depth, etc. But then I added the tube buffer, etc., and everything was okay. But now my systems are separate. The Ambiquad 2000 are integrated in my hi-fi system, my surround system, 7.1.4. for Atmos speakers. So yeah, they are no longer running on the Onkyo. The big QLS29s are still running on the Onkyo. That's the only pair of speakers that's connected at the moment. And well, it's basically the same setup. Going from that audio analog preamplifier, it goes into the jack-in, and from the jack-in tube buffer into the Onkyo. And well, what are my findings? Well, I have found out a couple of things. First of all, that preamp is amazing. One of the best preamps I've ever heard. And it doesn't really need the tube buffer anymore. And that's really interesting because I got high-end sound quality using my receiver in combination with the tube buffer. I wasn't that keen on the sound with just the power amp and the receiver without the tube buffer. But with the tube buffer, it was really good in my ears, and also from other people, they really liked it, but they didn't really like it without the tube buffer in it. But when I connected the set, I first used just the preamp and the power amp, and then hooked up the tube buffer, and the difference was really small. The sound just got a bit bigger. It was basically like you hear a really good solid state setup, and then you add tubes to it, like a preamp or maybe a tube DAC, something like that. And that's basically what that is, because it's not amplifying the sound, it's just running the current that comes from the preamplifier through the tubes, out the tubes, out of the buffer, into the power amplifier. So it doesn't amplify the signal at all. And you get that little bit of a tube feeling to it without the whole hassle of tubes. There is still a lot of speed in the sound. There is still a lot of macro detail. But the soundstage is also really spacious and big, and the bass is nice and full and rich. And that's the characteristics of tubes that I like. So I really still wanted to use my jack-in, and I'm still able to do that because it does enhance the sound. But I don't think it's a requirement in my system anymore. Before I used that preamplifier from Audio Analog, it was a must-have in my system because I didn't enjoy the sound with that preamp from the Denon and the Onkyo. Don't get me wrong, it was really good, and it's still way better than you would get out of cheaper receivers or even entry-level preamplifiers. But let me discuss a little bit why I bought this preamp, and tell me a little bit about this preamp. Well, this preamp is beautifully finished. It's handmade in Italy. Audio Analog is a brand that started in 1997, and this Bellini preamp is from around 2002. It also comes with a remote. I have that one somewhere lying around here, and let me get it. It is really heavy, made of solid aluminium, and it's, well, I would say about 500 grams at the minimum. It's, oh my, that's not supposed to happen, but Jesus Christ, it's a heavy bastard. And well, the good thing about it is it can take drops like that. Don't drop it on your head, you will probably end up in a hospital. But yeah, it's a really solid piece of engineering. I have some documentation about it here. This is what came with it from the previous owner. That's what its insides look like. Big Toriel transformer, nice volume pot, good quality op amps, all that stuff. So yeah, it cost about 900 to 1,000 euros back in the day. But the funny thing is, everybody on the internet that writes about this thing does not think the price is accurate to the performance of the device, because they say it performs well above its weight, around 3,000 to 4,000 euros worth of preamp. And a lot of people have experimented with high-end brands like Accuphase, Grell, Bryston, and they actually prefer this because of the little bit of a tubiness flavor that goes on in this preamp. I think it's more along the line of the classic Italian sound. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's like the flavor you get from certain hi-fi brands from certain countries. For instance, all the English speakers have a certain sound, certain characteristic, amplifiers as well. But German made equipment is a little bit more analytical. British is sometimes more relaxed, more laid back. And well, Italian is always, well, they use the word musical, but I think it's a little bit more towards the tube stage. Same thing with Sonos Faber speakers, etc., or other Italian audio equipment. It's always a bit more relaxed and it has that flow to the whole sound. And that's what I get with this thing as well. I still prefer using the tube buffer, but on its own, with just the power amplifier from Onkyo, it's an amazing combination and it sounds really, really well. The noise floor of the thing is also incredible because I am using tubes. Those tubes are in the line, and you could hear some tube noise from time to time, like you get with a tube amp. Of course, this is nowhere near, but still, the noise floor is so low that with basically every song I listen to, I hear the noise floor of the song. I've not heard that before. I will put my microphone close to the tweeter, and there is zero hiss. Zero. There's nothing. And my ears are really, really sensitive. I can hear charges from remotes and phones and all that stuff whining, that high-pitched whining some people get when somebody's charging their phone or maybe using some electrical equipment that's a little bit noisy. I can pick that up. I'm on a level of hearing dog whistles, but I do hear really high-pitched sounds. I actually did a hearing test, and my hearing was around, I don't know, really, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was higher than average. So I am really glad with that result because I listen to a lot of quiet music and really silent music, instrumental, jazz, that stuff. And when the noise floor is low, it's you can hear everything, and it's amazing. The noise floor is not only low because of the whole equipment situation I've got going on, but I actually have a power filter in the back. It's a really simple filter, but it actually does the job well if you connect it all right. I've actually put every single equipment in the correct phase and all that stuff. And well, if you add up all those tweaks, all those changes, you get a system that's as silent as night, my friends. Everybody says don't believe in cables, don't believe in power filter, blah blah blah. But if you add everything up, the whole story, the power filtering, the phase situation of the equipment, because even though you have alternating current, power supplies in audio equipment sometimes prefer certain hot, cold, ground on certain paths. Because if you have alternating current, it changes from positive to negative all the time. That's what comes out of your wall. And devices like this are designed to cope with that because they go from alternating current to direct current. But still, transformers and all that stuff still have that little bit of a preference to what line they want the hot wire to be, if you understand what I'm going with this. So when you put everything in phase, and I'm just talking about amplifiers, I'm not just talking about decks, no, the whole system needs to be in phase. You get a lot less leaking voltage from power supplies, and that is the hissing you hear in your speakers. If you put your ear next to your speakers, the hissing that you hear is because, well, you might have a PC on the same line. I have my PCs on separate power strips, etc. If I plug my PC into the same power cord that I use with my amplifiers and my decks and etc., it's a lot less because I use really good PC equipment and no hard drives, etc. But it's noisy. You get noise on your line, and it's just something you can hear. It's not fairy dust, my friends. This is real stuff. If you put your ears next to your speakers, I can guarantee you will hear the noise, which is actually ground hiss. But I'm getting really off topic here. And the funny thing is about this audio analog, is this is the Bellini. They have made a couple. They have made a couple of alterations. There's a new anniversary edition out, and the funny thing is that thing cost, what was it, €6,000, I believe. And when you look inside, you can just look it up for yourself, and you look up the insides of this one. Sure, the new one is housing better parts, different equipment, but it kind of has the same whole layout design. And I do not think, $5,000 worth of stuff went in there. And I see this a lot. When you see audio companies, starting their products, they're oftentimes cheaper because they need to get their stuff on market. People need to buy their stuff. People need to examine the stuff. But then when they are established, they start charging crazy amounts of stuff. Take a look at, for instance, Bauer & Wilkins. What did the 802 cost in, the early 2000s? Around 5, 6, 7,000. What does a 802 diamond cost nowadays? Yeah, close to 10 grand a piece. So when they are established, they can ask that price. Same goes with cars. And this is a preamp that costs 10, not 10 times the original price in performance, but this is definitely, when you put it up against other preamplifiers from established brands, I would say somewhere around the $4,000 easily. I've had some preamps from Quad, etc. that didn't really perform that well. Quad is not known for their high quality preamps. Power amps are amazing, preamps not so much. And I've read reviews of people using Macintosh preamps and Krell, Bryston, all that stuff, and people actually prefer this preamp. And you don't need much to get a good preamp going, because what you want with the preamp is a direct signal path. You don't want all kinds of filters and chips and volume pots and all that stuff. Just simple design, simple engineering. Simplicity is key with a good preamp and good parts. You don't want your signal that comes into your preamp to already be degraded before it even enters the power amplifier. So using a good quality volume pot, a good quality analog stage, balanced. This thing is balanced inside. It doesn't have balanced output, but it's just made balanced mono setup, and I really enjoyed it, because now my only thing in the chain that's not mono is my DAC. My DAC is not mono. It does have the two stages, but it doesn't have mono chips. And you actually, if you want a pure mono setup, you need double DAC chips going in separate lines, not necessarily using balanced cables, but that's another topic. RCA into the balanced preamp, into the tube buffer with the two tubes, so that's also a balanced stage, into the balanced mono power amp, because it has two separate power supplies, two separate channels. It's basically it's two mono blocks in one chassis into the speakers. So it's basically a whole mono setup that I've got going, and you hear that in the sound because there's so much separation in everything. And that was one of the big changes when going from that setup with the Denon and the tube buffer to that thing. I noticed a lot more separation in everything. I didn't get the feeling the sound was better, like you would go for a new amplifier or a new speaker or anything. It was more, everything was a little bit more clear, separated. There was more separation between the instruments. There was no change in soundstage. There was no change in highs, mids, or lows, or the definition of the music or the instruments. But it was more separated. Everything was more easily identifiable, if you understand what I mean. So yeah, that's that. Then I changed all of this here, because I was sick of the long shelves, because I'm just storing my whiskey up here. And, well, I wanted shelves that would just house my bottles nicely, And yeah, you also don't want whiskey sitting out in the sunlight because of different reasons. But yeah, I wanted to store them in their box if it was possible, because some of these bottles have been here for a long time. That 21-year-old, this is actually a 21-year-old Glendronach, has been sitting here for about 3 years. It's almost gone, but yeah, you don't want direct sunlight interacting with whiskey because things can separate and you don't want that. So I used some leftover wood that I saved from the building of my stereo rack, and I bought some new mounts. Same mounts as before, but in grey and with shorter brackets. And I put it up and everything matched, everything fit. Some minor adjustments needed to be done, but it's holding up nicely, and it's rated for about, no, these brackets and this whole system is rated for 50 kilos each, I believe. So yeah, it's secured in the wall with long screws. So I also could mount my speakers finally, and I'm using the same mounts that I used there, but from a different brand. These are from Monoprice, but same mount, different name. And I still need to get a little bit more of this channeling here, cut that to size, mount it all the way up there, and then make that all nice and well, fit. I am going to use 90-degree brackets, I think. Would look a little bit nicer. So I need to go to the hardware store and get that. But it's actually nice now because, as you can see, they're at the same height. And you do notice that with Atmos. You do want your front and rear channels to be at the same height, roughly. I had them a lot lower. I'm not saying these are at the millimeter precisely on the wall to the ceiling, but they are close enough, and especially with the mount like this, the measurements are a lot better. But the funny thing is, all the people go crazy about Atmos speakers. You need this, directional, this, that, so on and so on. People, it's a surround channel. You don't need to take that much care of your surround channels, especially not your Atmos channels, as you do for front and center or your surrounds. I am using these, yeah, excuse the mess here. COVID lockdown is still going hard. These TNAs are expensive, really expensive. I do not want to get rid of them, so I'm using them as my side channel. It's absolutely horrible to do that, and it hurts my feelings because I want to use them, but the room is not big enough. I cannot sit far backward enough to listen to these speakers properly because of their design and the setup with transmission line. You need to be around 4 meters back from them to being able to envelop their bass properly. So that's why I'm just using them as surround channels. I do not want to get rid of them. And then of course I have my quad 220s in the back. But yeah, that's the whole situation that's going on here. I am thinking about getting rid of my tuner because, well, I do not listen to radio that much. And when I do, I use my Shield because that's voice control. And I do not like digital radio. I think it's appallingly bad because sample rates are even lower than the basic free MP3 you get on Spotify. So DAB Plus and all that stuff can just go out of the way if you ask me. But the NVIDIA Shield radio setup, or even Deezer, uses higher quality bitrate streaming for radio. So I'm actually using that, and the noise floor is lower because with these old tuners you do get a bit of a hiss noise when you're not using a proper antenna setup. And I'm not having an antenna glued to the side of my house, not in this day and era. But yeah, I don't know, because I do like the thing, but it's an expensive thing. So I don't know if I'm going to keep it, yes or no. What do you think? What would you do? Would you keep that tuner? It is one of the best tuners ever made by Pioneer. It is a really good tuner. What? I don't know. So this video has been long enough. Yeah. Tell me about things you want to see on the channel. Videos about Onkyo, power amps, all that stuff, the way I mounted my surround system in this room, etc. Let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will catch you next time. Goodbye.